The dust hadn't settled yet when Captain Han Do-yoon entered the ruins. The Valkyrie base was nothing but twisted metal and broken crystal now. 3 hours ago it had been a fortress. Now it was a graveyard. His boots crunched on debris as he moved through the wreckage with his team. The air still smelled like burned chemicals and ozone. Do-yoon was tired. Everyone was tired. 3 years of this war had worn them all down to the bone. He was 34 years old but felt 60. His dark hair was streaked with dust and his combat armor had more dents than he could count. Behind him, Corporal Park Ji-woo kept pace, medical kit bouncing against his hip. "Captain, command wants us to finish the sweep and pull out," Ji-woo said quietly. He was younger than Do-yoon by 6 years, with kind eyes that had seen too much death. "They're saying 30 minutes. Do-yoon nodded but didn't respond. Something felt wrong. The Valkyrie were insectoid creatures with bodies like crystal and chitin mixed together. They were brutal fighters who never retreated. Yet this base had fallen too easily. Where were the last defenders? Where were the bodies? His scanner picked up movement deep in the western section. Do-yoon signaled his team to follow. They moved through collapsed corridors, weapons ready. The movement signature was weak, scattered. Not a threat. Maybe wounded enemies left behind, then he heard it. A sound that made him freeze. It was high-pitched, rhythmic, desperate. His translator unit crackled to life, struggling to interpret. The closest translation it could manage was simply, "Help, help, help." "Sir, we should call it in," Ji-woo whispered. Do-yoon held up his hand for silence. He moved toward the sound, stepping carefully over fallen beams. The signal was coming from beneath a collapsed section of the roof. Heavy slabs of their crystalline building material had fallen in layers, creating a pocket underneath. He knelt down and shined his light through a gap. 12 pairs of eyes stared back at him. They were small. So small. Valkyrie juveniles, each no bigger than a human 5-year-old child. Their crystalline carapaces hadn't fully hardened yet and looked fragile, almost translucent. They huddled together in the darkness, making that terrible sound, crying for help in a language humans had only ever heard screamed in battle. "Oh God." Ji-woo breathed beside him. "They're kids," Do-yoon's mind raced. Protocol was clear. Eliminate all enemy presence. The Valkyrie had shown no mercy to human colonies. Women, children, elderly. None had been spared when the Valkyrie attacked. Command would order these juveniles destroyed. They were the enemy after all. He looked at their eyes. Terrified, helpless. "Get the lifting equipment," Do-yoon said. "Sir?" Ji-woo's voice was uncertain. "We're getting them out. Captain, orders." "I know the damn orders, Corporal." Do-yoon's voice was firm but not angry. "Get the equipment." "That's an order." Ji-woo stared at him for a long moment, then nodded. "Yes, sir." What followed was 6 hours of careful, exhausting work. Do-yoon had his team cordon off the area and report it as a potential munitions cache that needed careful clearance. He and Ji-woo worked mostly alone, lifting debris piece by piece. The crystalline slabs were heavy and sharp. Do-yoon's hands were bleeding inside his gloves within the first hour. The juveniles watched them work. At first they pressed themselves against the far wall, terrified of the humans. But slowly, as they realized Do-yoon and Ji-woo meant no harm, they crept closer. Their translator picked up fragments of their communication. "Giants, careful, they help." One of the juveniles was trapped under a smaller piece of crystal. Do-yoon could see its leg was bent wrong. He spoke softly, knowing it probably couldn't understand. "I'm going to lift this, okay? Stay still." He lifted. The juvenile made a sharp sound of pain but pulled itself free. Ji-woo was there immediately with his medical kit. He worked quickly, stabilizing the leg with a splint made from bandages and a piece of metal. The juvenile touched Ji-woo's hand with one small crystalline claw, a gesture that seemed like gratitude. "Water," Ji-woo said. "They need water." They had brought emergency supplies. Do-yoon poured water into a shallow piece of debris that could serve as a bowl. The juveniles rushed to it, drinking desperately. How long had they been trapped? Since the battle started? Longer. 2 more hours passed. They cleared more debris. 9 of the juveniles could walk now. 3 were still trapped under a particularly heavy slab. Do-yoon studied it, calculating angles and weight distribution. One wrong move and the whole thing would collapse further. "We need to lever it from this side," he said. "Ji-woo, when I lift you pull them out, fast." "That slab weighs 300 kilos, sir." "I know." Do-yoon positioned himself, planted his feet, and pushed against the lever bar they'd rigged. Every muscle in his body screamed. The slab shifted, moved, lifted. Now, he grunted. Jiwoo dove in and pulled the 3 juveniles clear. Doyen held the weight for 5 more seconds, then let it drop. The crash echoed through the ruins. He collapsed against a wall, chest heaving. All 12 were free now. The juveniles gathered together, touching each other with their small claws, making sounds that might have been relief or joy. One of them approached Doyen where he sat. It reached out slowly and touched his bleeding hand with remarkable gentleness. Its crystalline surface was cool and smooth. Doyen smiled despite his exhaustion. "You're welcome, little one, sir," Jiwoo said softly. "We have company." Doyen looked up. In the shadows of the corridor, barely visible, stood a full-grown Velkari warrior. Its carapace was battle-scarred, its body language ready for violence. It had weapons but hadn't drawn them. The warrior's multifaceted eyes fixed on Doyen, then on the juveniles, then back to Doyen. The moment stretched like a blade. Then the warrior stepped backward into the darkness and disappeared. It didn't attack. It didn't sound an alarm. It simply witnessed what had happened here and left. Doyen let out a breath he hadn't known he was holding. "What do we do with them now?" Jiwoo asked, looking at the 12 small aliens. "Good question." Doyen activated his secure comm. "Command, this is Captain Han. I'm in the western section. I've found survivors, non-combatants, requesting medical evacuation and transfer to civilian holding." There was a long pause. Then Captain clarify. "Human survivors?" "Negative, Command. Velkari juveniles. 12 of them. They're injured and need immediate care." Another pause. Longer this time. "Captain Han, you are ordered to neutralize and proceed with mission completion." Doyen closed his eyes. He had known this was coming. "Command, I can't do that." "These are children. I'm requesting, ya Captain, you will follow orders." "No, sir. I won't." The silence on the comm was deafening. "Finally, extract yourself and your team immediately. File a full report upon return." "This isn't over, Captain." "Understood, Command." Han out. He looked at Jiwoo, who was trying to hide a smile. "Court-martial for sure," Jiwoo said. "Probably." Doyen stood up and looked at the juveniles. "Let's get them somewhere safe." They led the 12 small Velkari out of the ruins carefully. Doyen contacted the neutral medical corps that operated in the buffer zones. Within an hour, a medical shuttle arrived. The neutral medics asked no questions, just took the juveniles with professional efficiency. As the shuttle lifted off, one of the juveniles pressed against the window, looking back at Doyen. It raised one small claw in what might have been a wave. Doyen waved back. He didn't know it then, but that simple gesture would change everything. The warrior in the shadows had recorded everything. The evidence was already traveling through Velkari command channels. And deep in enemy territory, in a palace of crystal spires, a matriarch was about to see something that would shake her understanding of humans to its core. But for now, Doyen just felt tired and satisfied. He had made his choice. Whatever came next, at least he could live with that choice. In a war full of death and horror, he had chosen mercy. And mercy, as he would soon discover, had a way of echoing far beyond the moment it was given.